Emily Gullikson, and welcome to our OptixEQ VideoCast. This is June 27th, Wednesday. Emily, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Looking forward to this race review. I think it's an important thing to do, and it helps, obviously, using these products.
Yeah, so we had to pull Emily away from the World Cup for 5 minutes to do this. So so this week what we're going to concentrate on is race selection. So how do we do it? And we're going to use the examples from Race of the Day that we have out there. That previously we're going to look at last week's, and we're going to start with June the 22nd, Race 7. And Emily, just so you know, I have the screen up here, Race of the Day, where people could find it. And just note, folks, you can always go back and look at some of the old Race of the Days. I think we keep upwards of 20 on there as archives, so you can scroll down. And the 22nd of June, and it's Race 7 of San Diego. And Emily, this is one you did. Emily does the reviews Thursday through Sunday, so she's featured as the Race of the Day person during those days. And then we'll put some other things up, on the other days of the week, but just so you folks know how it works. So Emily, I'm going to pull up 622 Race 7 so we can look at it together. And you're going to.
And while you're pulling that up, I'll just talk a little bit about since we're going to talk about race selection and certain things that I look for Race of the Day. And there's kind of two things that I'll go to first before I start going sort of traditional race one through whatever when I'm looking through a card. Is if there's a stakes race or something that I know people are going to be a little bit interested in, I'll try to focus on those races because I know people will be playing them or they want to discuss them, talk about them. And then secondly, I'll have the plots, and it's so helpful being color-coded because I can just start at the favorite, right? You can see the morning line on the left-hand side of the plot where it's got the, under 3 to 1 is green. So if I see those horses that are in green that look moderately vulnerable, those are races that I'm like, all right, this might be a good race because I want to bring something, I'm not a big favorites player. I'm not looking for, the most likely, the easiest winner on the card. I want to come up with something a little bit creative or maybe something that people are going to miss. So in this case, it's a little bit different because you look at this plot, I kind of went on it because it's a stakes race. You look at the plot and you have that green, that big square in quadrant 1. So right off the bat, it looks like, okay, we have a strong favorite here. But I went into the grid, and then that's where I noticed we might have a bit of a vulnerable favorite.
Okay, and the big favorite in this race was Valdori, and I have him up on the grid right now. So what was it that kind of signaled that this horse might be vulnerable?
Well, if you have the grid pulled up, and you can just look at her, you kind of look at her run lines, and I go from the bottom up. So if I'm looking at, the beginning of her career and you start seeing, these speed figures, optics figures that are, mid-90s, a couple triple digits in there, and then you see that layoff, right, which occurred May 6th. She comes off the layoff, runs an 85, which, it's off a layoff, so you could expect maybe in the next start she would move forward. When she didn't, and actually there was an even, kind of slight regression, 85, 82, this kind of signals this is a mare that could be going the wrong way. I mean, she's never run anything like that since she's been stateside. So then I went back and I looked at the notes there. I watched the replays just to kind of see, if there was anything, just kind of a double check on there. And it just looked like, she was going the wrong way. So if you compare where she is on the plot is obviously using those back figures. But if you compare those 82, 85s to other horses in the field, she's not the strong favorite that she will be come betting time.
Yeah, and the other thing is she's 6 now, right? And mares horses tend to kind of decline, right? They're not going to really get a lot better at 6, right? They're normally in a decline period. And the other thing that I noticed about her trips previously, they're all like perfect. So she's kind of putting herself in position, right? And she's getting perfect trips. And that's usually a sign of a good horse, a horse that, kind of dictates their own outcome, destiny, so to speak. What troubled me, too, is kind of when they start getting out of the gate slow, right? And that's why it's good to kind of see these things. She's had, that trouble start. and I watched the race, the race that we're talking about where she lost, right, this day. Again, she had a little bit problem getting out of the gate. Just could be a little bit souring on racing, right? That could be the field here. What do you think though? I mean, like, so she come off the layoff but she did decline, but they did put her in. She went from a grade 3 to a grade 1. How do you look at how do you factor that in there, or do you?
Yeah. So one, you need to see a little bit more, and that's why I did kind of review and went back and looked at the note. The extended comment, the trouble start, which you had mentioned, like how much that impacted, if that made any difference. And then just how she was finishing, it was just like visually, just I don't know, for lack of a better word, just kind of going the wrong way.
Yeah.
And then when she shows up in, from a grade 1 to a restricted stake is not the biggest
confidence,
confidence,
yeah,
right?
Agreed.
I mean, maybe they want to get her confidence back, but she hasn't been at this level since, for 2 years.
Yeah, that's a good point. And again, if you want to look at notes and just feel like are these races, there's something else. I mean, she just basically was C+ in both races. She's never run a C in her career, right? So she's paired 2 C+. So visually, like, she wasn't exciting any. There wasn't anything in that race from a trouble perspective or exciting us to get her. She was C+. So visually, she in her races from a trip perspective and both numbers wise, she looks to be on the decline, right? And so I guess in this race, she was, I guess, morning line like 6 to 5, but I think she eventually went off 4 to 5. I just looked. She went off 4 to 5. So even though if we go back to the plot, Emily, right? Typically you look at this and say, wow, this is probably a race I'm going to pass or whatever. You got 4 to 5 shot, looks dominant on the plot. You made a point in your note is that she may not be that square anymore.
Right.
And that's so now that you have a vulnerable favorite, so how do you approach it now, Emily? What do you look at and what do you do once you have a vulnerable favorite? How do you approach the race then?
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of kick myself on this analysis because I could have easily upgraded the winner. I mean, just based on the fact that you have a vulnerable favorite. Everybody deserves a little bit of credit after that. So that's just sort of the way I'll approach it is just kind of go through. I mean, everybody would probably be upgraded, right? Because you take out the favorite, you have horses that there's not a lot of separation between them. So that's sort of where the handicapping goes. And yeah, I mean, the information was good, and where I say I kick myself, I mean, I should have upgraded the 6 a little bit more based on the plot because she does look good. So that was just, one, not the information being bad, but my opinion kind of being bad,
And in fact, I don't know if you saw how Optics works on her.
No, I didn't, because I did it so far in advance.
You did it far in advance, yeah. So she was razor lit up B+. So she really was working off the charts, which is a little bit, when saddlers horses are working like that, typically I give them a real good look because typically they're not shining in the morning, at least from our works perspective. They're usually like hard ridden, whatever. When you see a horse really kind of work like that, it was a major upgrade for that horse. I mean, she was a kind of a B- kind of work. B would be a top, but they were really liking the way she was looking, and she was coming into that race nicely.
Well, the other thing is too because I do this so far in advance. I probably, if I'd done it that day, I probably would have upgraded her based on, like you just mentioned, Sadler. So the day before, what was that stake? It was that sprint race, that 7 furlong that San Carlos maybe that we did for race of the day.
Yeah.
And both of his horses, I mean, his one horse that he had just taken off the claim that Sanjo Bay ran, huge.
Oh yes. Yes.
And so I kind of knew at that point, like, I had made a mistake because, when a barn's going well, then those are the horses, that you can kind of tend to upgrade, especially in a spot like this.
Okay, well, I think the key, though, in this race was, the race selection, finding a vulnerable favorite, and kind of looking past the plot here, right? And going to the notes and seeing, a horse that's probably headed in the wrong direction. And it was a good call, right? Because she did she lost. And she didn't even hold second, right? Let's look at the results here. Yeah, she finished third. So you got her out of the exacta. So there's value there, right? I mean, I think the way I approach these races, I try to look for any horses I can eliminate, right? And if I can eliminate 2 horses, and in my case it was the 2 and the 7, then I could try to make hay around the other 4 that were left in the race and try to do something. So anyway, that's an example of using notes really and form cycle to identify notes and optics figures to identify a horse that might be vulnerable. Okay, the next race we're going to go look at, Emily, is another one you did, was the Belmont race, and that was on the 24th. I'm going to pull it up here. I think it was a stakes race also, or it was maybe not, maybe an allowance race. Yeah, it was an allowance race. It was on the grass. This was a good race. So what were you thinking here? This was 11 furlong on the inner turf race at Belmont. I pulled up the plot, and I got it on standard right now. So what do we got?
Right. So again, starting with the favorites, and it's kind of a little tricky looking at the plot as far as it being on standard. Did I use a plot for this one? I think I used the surface plot, maybe.
Yeah, I think you did. So that's surface at distance, and that's a good point. I mean, people ask. I do look at all these different versions of the plot just to see if I'm seeing some differences or what have you. So it's a good technique. Yeah, you have the surface.
Yeah, so I believe I used a surface plot because on standard, and again, that's what I did. Is I looked at all 3 and went back and forth between looking at each plot and then kind of looking at the grid, because it being the 11 furlong distance. And I felt like the way that this race would play out, the way that I envisioned it was pretty similar to the surface plot, so I kind of worked off that. And so in that case, if you're looking at the surface plot, you have the 5 and the 2, which are your morning line favorites. And from that perspective, they don't look strong. And I remember I used quad stat on this because obviously the 5, the 2 looks similar to the 9, right? Being,
right.
2 to 1 versus 15 to 1. So I can kind of make a case around that. But the quad stat, you look at the quadrant 1 circles, and they win at such a low percentage.
Yes.
So that made that horse a little bit vulnerable. So you have the 1 that could potentially, apply pressure, and that low percentage on quad stat. And then the 2, not looking much better than other horses in that area, but mostly coming from the grid and just utilizing that 11 furlong distance, highlighting in the projection shorter. Maybe I did 11 furlongs in the distance as far as a filter.
Okay. Let me just do that so people can see.
Yeah, I think that's what I had pulled up for the race of the day, which is, and then I went through my handicapping, kind of utilizing that, and pretty much saw the 2 when he's at 11 furlongs, that being a less than ideal distance. So the shorter on that, the 5 out. The 1 kind of by elimination, right? If I'm nixing the 5, I'm going to take out the 1 as well. So kind of like what you said on the last one, where you're just eliminating horses. So that's kind of my process, right? I eliminated the 1, I eliminated the 5. The 2 I felt was soft. And then just kind of went from there as far as horses, and really found that the 4, the 5, and the 11 were the horses to use in this spot.
And the 8.
I'm sorry. What did I say? The 4. I'm sorry. 4, 8, 11.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, and I thought this 8 would get the kind of the trip, and he did. Just wasn't good enough, and this kind of cost me contest win. To be honest with you, I was between the 4 and 8. You could pick one in the contest. It was one of those kind of contests, and instead of finishing first, I finished 4th. So I went with the 8. Just thought he might be in a better position. Thought the pace scenario wasn't that hot. I thought he would just sit the perfect trip, and he kind of did. He just wasn't good enough. Sometimes pace in these longer races are less relevant. It's more kind of just ability to get the distance stamina and kind of class, and so that's just something to kind of be on the lookout
Right.
for.
And I think in the same circumstance when we talk about you're deciding between the 4 and the 8, and in my analysis not giving like that strong of a push to the 6, but when we take these type of races and we use them like for pick 6 and things like that, both those horses are on our tickets.
Yes.
With strong opinions, right? Like we're not forced to choose one like you are in the contest situation.
That's correct. Right, and then if you're playing contests, you have
multiple. You're betting your regular bets, to move you through.
Absolutely. So it turned out pretty good. I mean, I think the 4 won and the 8 finished second, and the favorite, the 2, did split the horses. So he's solid. I mean, other than that, but the other favorite finished 4th, the 5, the one that we talked about. So that was the result. So again, this is kind of a messy race. But again, your selection was really more kind of, the first thing was it's kind of a featured kind of a race of the day, and sometimes these races that aren't so straightforward are good opportunities because everyone's going to kind of struggle with them a little bit, right? But I think the focus is how do we assess the favorite? And the favorite could have been just a little bit vulnerable or not look any better than anyone else in this race, and that was kind of your takeaway, I believe.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm going to show you what I did, and I just put the information out there. I didn't kind of make a commitment on it selection-wise, but I did say that I thought the race flow would kind of fall apart. And they had a big day at Canterbury Racing, which hats off to them. I thought it was a great card, and the racing was great. On the 23rd of Saturday, and it was their biggest races of the year. And the way I picked this race, and I've shown this before on videos, is I used OptixScan. I went and I found a race that I thought would have a lot of high speed rating. That's basically what I looked for. And it's the 4th race. It's the Mystic Lake Mile. I'm going to bring up the plot so everyone can see. And so this race, you can see, had a very high speed rating, over 40. Contention was a flame. And once you see these kinds of races, Emily, I do a couple of things just to confirm that what I'm looking at, because sometimes these things will melt down, sometimes they won't. So I do a couple of steps just kind of help me. The first thing I do is I kind of look at, like you do, I kind of go through surface distance, that kind of stuff. So I'm going to flip over to surface distance on this race. And when I do, you can see the congestion. I mean, there's just a bunch of circles in quadrant. I visually can see that, right? And the only square in there is the number 4 horse. The next thing I do, though, is just to make sure that if this race can melt down, is I really check the run styles against that. So in this case, the 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, and 9 are all EEP horses. So that's the way they like to run, right? That's where they have their most success. So when I look at this race, I'm saying that matches the way the plot looks. It looks like they're all going to be contending for the lead. If I were to see like most of these horses being P and PCs, I would say, the race may not melt down because they're just not go early horses. But you can see, and if you hover over some of these horses, you can see they do their best running up close for the surface and distance. So that was the first confirmation. I could see the RPM, right? The Optix RPM, the run styles bunched up just like the plot. So I like that. I like it that it looks like that. Second thing is about the cluster, they're circles, right? So the other thing is that I'm concerned that some of these horses can last, with the exception of the 4, they're all circles. So that means that their pace relative to these other horses is less, and so I like to see circles bunched or big circles in this space. So that was the second thing. And then the third thing, when you start looking at the closers in quadrants 2, the squares in quadrant 4 and quadrant 2, in this case it's all quadrant 4. I want to make sure, you see I hover over it right there, I want to make sure that these horses had success as closers. And you can see in the case of Patriots Rule, if you look at what we have with the standard surface distance. At surface distance, he's had 1. He's the biggest square. So that's like, okay, he's shown the capability, and he's, for other surfaces and distance, he's won more than that. But today's surface and distance, he's won once. You can see that the 11's won twice. You can see that the 6 here is only won once as a closer. He's been more of a presser type. And then the 1, you can see this is your real closer. He's way down the bottom. He's won 5 times. That's all the way he runs. He's won 5 times as a closer. So in this race, I was kind of looking for what interests me was potential meltdown. I confirmed that, and the fact that all the horses that potentially would take benefit from the meltdown were like almost double-digit morning line odds. So that was kind of my approach on this race, and the results were, you could see. I mean, the first and second winner came out of quadrant 4. The only horse of that whole cluster that came out, the show horse, was a square, and these were some big prices: 16 to 1 over 11 to 1. So that was the approach in the selection of that race. We were kind of anticipating a meltdown. It worked out in our favor this time, and it was very beneficial. So those are the things in terms of race selection we use. And again, once you get the race selection, looking at these types of races, make sure you're verifying the run styles with the way they're plotting. So that was that race. And Emily, when you look at these races, these meltdown races, how do you approach them, or do you look for any particular?
I see. I think you described it perfectly. This is exactly what you want to see. That congested quadrant 1, horses above, most of the horses above the par line, that high contention, speed ratings, and then validate that with the notes. If you start seeing, a lot of BOS, lone, press, dual, those are horses, this race is just going to melt down because those horses have one way of going. And these are great opportunities to play horses from off the pace, especially when they're going to be good prices.
Yeah, they could break your heart. I wouldn't be taking 3 or 4 to 1 on quadrant 4 because it's just the win percentage is lower than any other quadrant. But in these circumstances, then you may get 3, and it's great with scan. You could maybe identify 3 to 5 potential ones a day using scan, and then do your due diligence. And Emily brings up a great point. When you see some of these horses in quadrant 1 that you think might be pressing, not only look for red, like lone, they do their best running when they're on the lead by themselves. But the other thing you want to look for keywords like dual and press, and see how they do. One of the things I like to kind of do sometimes is when you go into the grid, and I'm just going to pull up something random, and you want to look at a particular horse. I'm going to look at this number 5 here. Look for certain keywords like pressed, and see how they run when they're pressed. If you think they're going to be pressed today, they always have the potential to be pressed, right? And, you don't anticipate a horse always to be lone on the lead, but look for that and see how they compete when they're getting pressure, right? So I think that's a good point. And so those are the 3 races. We showed you how we kind of select race of the day. We kind of reviewed the kind of the results. We're open for more input in terms of new things. I just want to point out to people too, this whole thing with we have an Optics program now. It's a simpler version of Plot. It's available with your subscription, and we've been doing a lot of race of the days with it. So look for it. It's just kind of a neat format and condensed format of Plot. It's more for people who want to take something to the track with them. It's a PDF. We have it in PDF form, and also you can get it on HTML on your screen too. It puts the standard surface distance, together. So look for that, and that's it. We're always looking for input and questions and things that you want to kind of cover, topics, and look for us on OptixEQ.com. Send us an email at customer@OptixEQ.com. Any closing thoughts for the players out there, Emily?
No, I guess that's, we got a big weekend at Woodbine. We'll have stuff up on our site for sure, race of the day all weekend. And of course, I'm on the Woodbine side as well. So I think that's kind of the big thing going on this weekend.
Okay, great. Well, we're getting ready almost for Del Mar and Saratoga. I'm going to put out a short one-pager probably on both of them in terms of some plot analytics that are kind of unique to those track profiles. So look for that in the coming week. Again, just keep plugging. Handicapping is hard business, and you just kind of need to keep kind of hacking at it. I had a user today, Emily, that sent me an email saying, I'm finally, getting this now, right? And it's just great to see. Our approach is different. We're focused on, pace dynamics and form cycles, really our approach. And our products are all kind of centered around that. And it does take a little time.
And it's just like anything, right? Anything requires practice. Like, no one, start to drive a car, like when you're 16, like you're not good, you take practice. If you start playing horses, it takes practice. You start playing a sport, it takes practice. And you keep reviewing the things, you're still out catching ground balls. Like there's things that have to just be reinforced over and over again. To think that, even myself and you were in this program, more than anybody, obviously, but we're still learning things and we're still figuring out different tricks and using different things and switching up styles and, all that stuff. So, yeah, stay with it for sure. It's a marathon.
Very good. Okay, folks, thanks a lot. We'll catch you in